Time for a special session of City Council's Planning Board Working Group. Join us for City Council's Planning Board Working Group, starting now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Here we go.
It's okay. We're passing the soda. I couldn't get it. Thank you all for joining us for the special planning board and city council session. I always look forward to these meetings. We are having people trickle in a little bit, and I will go around the room and get started. And when you introduce yourself, will you just say if you're, I know that city council members, but I think we have a new planning board member, so just for my colleagues, if you want to pay special attention to our new planning board member, that would be important. So I'm Amanda Sandoval. I represent Northwest Denver and have the honor of being council president right now, and look forward to these sessions. So I'll go around the room and start to my left.
Good afternoon, Flor Alvidrez, Lucky District 7.
Good afternoon, Paul Kashmann, South Denver, District 6.
And Jamie Torres, West Denver, District 3.
Melissa Mejia, Planning Board Member.
Alisha Hammett, Denver Planning Board.
Andrew Webb, Denver Community Planning and Development.
Rob Haigh, Community Planning and Development.
Deirdre O's, Planning Board Member. Caitlin Quande, Planning Board Member and current chair.
Julie Meenam, new Planning Board Member.
Chris Hinds, Denver's Perfect 10, which, welcome to Perfect 10.
Hi, Diana Romero Campbell, Southeast Denver, District 4.
Did you say Julie? Is that Julie? Okay. All right. So we'll pass it over to CPD. The floor is yours.
Very quick. Thank you so much for the time again today. This is the fourth joint session that we've had with you all. And so we just kind of like to build on what we've been talking about and give you an update about where the Unlocking Housing Choices project is today. So we have a quick agenda to go through. We'd like to first kind of review the project and the project goals, and then recap kind of where we are and what the strategies look like that we're currently refining. Then we will talk about some more specific details on the affordability bonus, and then the survey and engagement analysis that when we last met in March we were just about to go into. And then finally we'll talk a little bit about expected outcomes and a recent report that we had prepared by our consultant team. So a little bit of ground setting here, and as we reach a point in the project where we're refining our key strategies, it's important to remind ourselves where we started. So these were our original project goals. So they are to allow more missing middle housing, update the building forms to promote compatibility, incentivize the retention of existing homes, explore incentives for requirements for on-site affordability, and implement blueprint in our NPI plans that call for this missing middle housing initiative as a citywide project. So from those original goals, we've been working closely with our advisory committee to develop the strategies we're working on and we'll talk about that we're refining today. Last summer, we established the project's background, got our arms around what we're really trying to do within that committee. And then in the fall of 25, we addressed some of the scheduling challenges and really got started on the work of developing the project strategy, had lots of workshops, or had a few workshops, and really came out of that with these three key strategies that we have in refinement now. Then through the winter of and spring of 2026, we made progress testing those strategies and really understanding the feasibility and taking a look at what uptake we might expect. And then now here on the right, this kind of shows generally the process of how we have been working with our advisory committee, partner agencies, stakeholders, and all of you through this development of our strategies. And also, throughout this whole project, our primary guidance has continued to come from Denver's adopted plans. So we place significant weight on these plans because these plans just are much better supported than we are to complete the community engagement, supported by longer community engagement processes. They're better resourced, they have community navigators, and so we really rely on that deep work that happened And our work that we're doing now, or that we just completed out in the community, is still crucially important, but is supplementary to this. So, as a reminder, these are our 3 key strategies that we have developed through that process, and that we're working to refine in the current stage. So these are to improve compatibility of residential development, allow more homes when an existing home is retained, and allow more homes when affordability is provided. When we talk about and when we're considering changes to our building standards, these are to make house-scale development fit better within the existing neighborhoods that make up Denver's low-scale, house-scale residential neighborhoods. This could include revising how we regulate third floors or half stories, could include second-story terraces and balconies, different standards there, exceptions for porches, and also changing regulations around wall height or length to address things that we see in our plans, which is the community vision for homes that look more like, again, what exists in existing communities. So these changes would apply to new single-unit development as well as new missing middle housing development that's allowed by unlocking housing choices. So in addition to that, we're also working on a proposal to establish a maximum floor area limitation on residential development. The floor area maximum would increase for each additional housing unit to financially incentivize missing middle housing development instead of these very large single-unit homes that we see that are pervasive today. This would still maintain a size and scale that is appropriate to the neighborhood. Current building forms allow for houses that are often 2 to 3 times larger than the size of homes that were traditionally built in those existing neighborhoods. So these strategies will help moderate the price of new homes, slow speculative redevelopment, and really promote the development of the strategies that we are introducing through unlocking housing choices. However, even though we're placing this limitation on single-unit homes still significantly larger than average homes across the around 2,000 square feet for a detached single-family home. So 3,500 square feet, even though it is a limitation, it is still significantly larger than the majority of homes in the city and allows for individuals, homeowners, to still add value to their properties if they plan on keeping it as a single unit. So this infill bonus is the second key strategy, and it would allow for additional dwelling units when when the existing home is retained. So through this strategy, unlocking housing choices seeks to discourage demolition, expand options available for builders and homeowners to incentivize the creation of new housing units while keeping the existing homes in place. The third key strategy is the affordability bonus. So this would allow for a completely new structure to replace an existing home, but requires at least one of the units to be either deed restricted as affordable or become part of a community land trust. And we'll take a closer look at this strategy in the next few slides. But we wanted to provide this quick overview of kind of where we were and what we talked about last March before we get into new material. So over the last month or so, we have really been working on updating and kind of refining this affordability strategy and the details going into this. So this is one of the main things we'd like to cover with you today. So this strategy fits in below the existing mandatory affordable housing requirements for 10 units or more that exist currently and were developed under the Expanding Housing Affordability Project, or EHA. So somewhat different than these existing requirements is that what we are proposing is a bonus, so that we allow these additional housing types in exchange for the affordable units that are being created. So this provides these opportunities beyond the current zoning. These affordable units can be for rent or for sale, and host will be the primary administrator of these requirements. So the current proposal would require at least one of the units in a development to be affordable to a median household earning 70% of the area median income for the city if it is for rent, or 100% of the area median income if it's for sale. As an example, and what that really looks like on paper, for a it works out to about $18.90 per month for a one-bedroom house, or $26.21 per month for a three-bedroom house. At a for sale rate, this looks like $392,450 for a one-bedroom home, or $504,700 for a three-bedroom household. So beyond this, and just to summarize a few more details, the affordability bonus applies to single-unit and two-unit zoned properties. This incentivizes affordable housing development up to 9 units, again below the mandatory affordable housing requirements, where those requirements would take precedent. Unlocking Housing Choices is not proposing an inclusionary zoning requirement for row house zone districts, since they are already allowed to construct additional units. Again, this is the bonus that is allowed for single unit and two unit zone districts. The area median income is based on the Denver metropolitan area as calculated by HUD, and AMI levels for income restricted rental or for sale units are set and applied citywide and do not vary by neighborhood. So during this last phase of strategy development, we also tested the feasibility of our proposed changes and strategies and found that our updated standards reduce the maximum profitability driven by the replacement of these moderately sized homes with very large new homes and duplexes. And the effect of this could be to slow speculative development and steer builders towards our other strategies, our infill bonus particularly. The infill bonus is shown to be the most financially feasible, most financially profitable for homeowners, market builders, and affordable housers. And the affordability bonus is likely only to be used by nonprofit or mission-driven affordable housing developers, or by other builders who can combine multiple funding sources to close the gap between development costs and the revenue generated by these income-restricted units. So generally, when we looked at this in multiple different areas of the city, kind of hypothetically with different land costs, different potential rents, or for sale prices, for the math really to work out and have really for the math to work out, there need to be multiple funding sources. So a market rate developer without any subsidy, without any other gap financing would have a very difficult time purchasing a property, scraping a home, rebuilding it in one of these ways, and providing one of the units at an affordable rate. So for that reason, the infill bonus then becomes kind of the most attractive option for a market rate developer under these strategies, who would look to retain that existing house as required by the strategy, and construct additional housing on that property. Now we'd like to quickly review the survey results and engagement analysis. So when we met last March, we were just preparing for a round of community engagement that ended in early April. Since that meeting, we've incorporated what we've learned from the community along with additional stakeholder input, our feasibility study, and also work with our advisory committee to continue refining our strategy details. So once again, when considering community input in project strategies, at this point in the project, it provides extremely helpful guidance for many of the important details, but we do still continue to place significant weight on the city's adopted plans because they are supported by much longer, better resource community engagement processes. And the engagement we conducted this spring included 5 public meetings hosted by CPD. Andrew and I attended 25, or more than 25 R&O meetings where we presented briefings and got a lot of great input and answered a lot of questions about unlocking housing choices. And we also distributed an online survey and had over 800 responses to that. So the responses from the survey generally showed support for the key project strategies, while also highlighting several areas of concern. So the survey is a really important tool for checking our work. It helps us confirm that we are headed in the right direction and that we're considering the full range of community concerns, and that we're really not missing the mark at any point. This also helps us identify issues that may need additional attention and help illuminate blind spots as we refine our proposal. So in addition to the survey, we also had a lot of great responses to our engagement, either through our comment form, the subjective answers in the survey comment area, or during our community meetings. And this really helped us also identify some key areas of concern and things that we need to highlight and address. So overall, the spring community engagement, again, helps us refine these details, while the overall policy direction is really still set. We do have a much more detailed report on all of this engagement that we've conducted, and that's available on our website for anyone that's interested, or reach out to Andrew now. We can be happy to send that to you as well. So now, last piece, and then we can get into some discussion. We'd like to provide a quick overview of our expected outcomes. This can help ground the conversation in what the proposed changes are likely to produce over time, and will include kind of general ideas about the pace, location, and type of redevelopment that we may see after unlocking housing choices is adopted, if it is adopted. So. Ultimately, this is a really difficult question to answer. It relies on many different considerations, different markets, variables, continued demand for living in the city, construction costs, interest rates, the availability of property at prices that actually work and are favorable for development and redevelopment. And so through all of these, our consultants helping us with this project, Group Policy Research, developed a report that's summarized here in this slide just very briefly. The report's several pages long, so I'd recommend anyone who is interested in more detail to take a look at that report. At broad strokes, the report is based on development trends that have happened in Denver, and then that kind of combined with what we've seen in peer cities. They looked at neighborhoods where development is happening more rapidly, where their markets are really strong, and then those where there are less strong markets, to kind of understand where we might see the potential outcome. So over the past 15 years, from 2010 to 2024, we saw 237 single unit dwellings that are redeveloped each year. The majority, 155, are replaced with larger single unit homes, and 82 of those were replaced annually with missing middle housing units. So part of this is because in many areas, the only thing that you can replace your single unit house with is a larger single unit home, and that contributes largely. But this rolls into our expectation. At the low end, we could expect to see 83 single unit lots citywide convert into 249 missing middle housing units. And at the high end, we could see as many as 675 single unit lots convert into 2,025 missing middle homes. It's important to remember while thinking of these that a significant portion of this redevelopment would retain that existing house as part of the requirement, and would not include a demolition. So another really important takeaway from this study was that redevelopment is focused in certain areas of the city and in certain neighborhoods. And unlocking housing choices and what we've seen in other cities is this is not expected to dramatically change. So typically where markets are strong is driven by location to amenities. This map here shows the recent redevelopment, so what we have seen since 2010. And the areas with more dense redevelopment would be the areas that we expect to continue to see redevelopment. As this is not expected to dramatically shift. The zoning simply changes, in most cases, what we see in other cities, what is built, not where it is built. So that concludes our presentation for today. And as we're getting into the Q&A session and hearing your comments as we normally do, we'd like to pose this question to you. And it's that, would you support this citywide proposal as it comes to planning board and as it comes to city council for a vote later this year? And if not, what changes would you need to see to be able to support this phase? Again, we're at the point where we have our kind of key strategies and we're refining them and working in the details. But generally, kind of here on the right, we have this more compatible residential design, and then the two options that allow for additional missing middle housing options. So interested really to hear what you all have to say, but happy to answer any questions as well. So thank you.
Thank you. So I'd just like to welcome Councilmember Watson, Councilwoman Gonzalez Gutierrez. Sorry, I had Serena written down because I go by first. I'd like to introduce Board Member Rachel and Mary. Okay, did I miss anyone? Okay, got it. Thank you. And for those who are wondering, you can find this presentation on Legistar. It's like under a special thing. I can't remember what it is.
Group or
something.
What's it under?
Group.
Like a working group.
It's a working group. I'm trying to find it right now. I can't find it.
Workshops and presentations.
Yeah, thank you. Councilwoman Alvidrez. So first up, I have Councilwoman Alvidrez. Perfect timing.
Awesome. Thank you, Council President. It sounds like there's been a lot of work and discussion put into this. I appreciate that. One of the things that hits me right away is just that what I've been hearing is we want simpler, straightforward, and easy to understand, and this is not giving me simple, straightforward, easy to understand for the general public. I am worried about two particular things. One is the infill bonus and the affordable housing requirements, or not requirements, but bonuses. And that is because, well, number one, I think we're working on our housing needs assessment, which will tell us where the needs are, which I think is important. Number two is I worry, because we've seen it happen on other affordable housing projects, that people that want to live in these units won't qualify. They either make too little or too much. I worry about the gross versus net income, because just because someone makes $100K doesn't mean their health insurance doesn't take a bunch of that. And so I have concerns about those units I'm seeing in my district for rent units, and I've seen in instances of for sale affordable units really struggle to get off the market. And so I think that the strategy around the size makes sense, and that will automatically make these units cheaper, especially if you're going to be putting 3 units on a lot. Those are not going to be that highly desirable, most likely multi-million-dollar. And then I know there had been talk about different approaches in different areas, looking at the price per acre. Mary, I think, was the one that brought that up last time, or maybe 2 times ago, and how we approach that in nest areas, like some of the west side of my district versus Council President's district, which is like completely almost redeveloped, looking at the color map. So I'm curious about those things, but firstly around the housing needs assessment and how that will play into this strategy.
Yeah, great question. I don't have a complete answer for you. We are still working regularly with hosts. We have regular coordination meetings, and as they get further along in that that process, we'll be kind of inputting that data and making sure that any changes that need to happen that come out of that are absolutely going to do so. And we also have the benefit of having the same consultant on our project, Root Policy Research, so they also have that inside window and are able to kind of help directly integrate kind of what they're learning as they're starting that needs assessment. So yeah, that's a good observation, and we'll definitely be coordinating.
Okay, those are my concerns. I think overall, I would like to see it be simpler, more straightforward. I do have concerns about the affordability requirement and the reality of people looking for housing being able to qualify for these very strict, rules around qualifying. And then my last concern is that this is really incentivizing nonprofits and affordable housing developers. Great, but what about homeowners that want to add a couple units or multi-generational housing? I feel like that those people could be left out.
Right, and if I can respond. Okay, so that infill bonus is absolutely what's targeted for homeowners too, since that house, in those cases, typically it's much more cost effective to keep that home in place, and someone can live there. Maybe there's some work that's done on that house, and then those additional units can be built.
Don't they have to be income restricted?
No, they do not.
So the bonus does not have to be income restricted.
So correct. So it's either or. So you are either creating an affordable unit, one or more on the property, or you are retaining the house, and you can build additional units that are market rate.
Okay, but still a homeowner may want to sell one of those units.
And that's still possible too. So in this, the same way that a duplex today or a row house today is divided by parcel and still remains on one zone lot, this strategy would allow for that separation by deed or through the assessor's office.
So what's the difference of what you mentioned in the beginning? There's a difference between a homeowner or how it's incentivizing homeowners?
It's just possible. They don't have to have
You said if they retain it. So if they're
correct.
Selling it, they're not retaining it.
Oh, just keeping it on the property, just not demolishing it.
The additional unit.
All they need to do is not demolish that existing house, and they could build, 2 additional units at the rear. If the lot, of course,
We're
works
saying
for it.
preserving the original single-family home and the other duplex or whatever you add to it, that would be allowed to go market rate. Am I hearing you correctly? All right.
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councilmember Kashmann, followed by Councilmember Hinds.
Thank you, Madam President.
And if anyone wants to get in the queue, just hand me.
So I'm missing a couple of basics here. As things sit today, are we talking about a blanket approach citywide that all properties can build 3 units, 4 units? Where are we at?
We currently have not talked about an overall limit on the number of units. So what we found in our testing is that generally the number of units is limited by the size limitation. So I'll flip back to the slide that shows the potential floor area limitation. And this is kind of what keeps things in check. And on a 6,500 square foot property, it generally is only feasible to build 3 to 4 units.
So does that override, currently our zoning is, we talk about urban and suburban and edge and so on. That goes away in effect in this particular area, and we're just looking at available lot size?
Potentially, but there are those, within the different contexts are areas that we are looking at potentially having different standards. So different setback standards and things like that are still likely to be different in the same way, the suburban house form is different than the urban house form. This new form that we build may have some differences there. So it's, it's the same strategy that might be tweaked kind of between the different contexts.
SU and TU, for instance, would go away.
They would still be the, I see what you're saying. So without, let's see, so without utilizing these bonuses, a single unit zone district, you could still only build a single unit. But if you preserve that house, then you qualify for these additional types.
We're getting rid of the existing protections that say in this zone district, 1 house per lot.
Yes, we would be changing the and allowing multiple units on a single unit zone lot.
Okay. Thank you. That clarifies. Appreciate that. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councilmember Hinds, followed by Pro Tem Romero Campbell.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for the presentation. Thanks to Planning Board for being here as well. It's fun to have these combined meetings. So I'm not going to speak on behalf of all of Denver. I represent District 10, which is the Center City District, which allows me to have sponsored multiple density, pro-housing options, eliminating parking minimums. It's just one example. I'm for the Minneapolis model, frankly, where we just get rid of single-family zoning or allow multiple units everywhere throughout the city. That's something that I feel comfortable that I can say on behalf of at least the majority of the people I represent. So with this, I think, again, I'm representing Denver, so I'm hearing other perspectives from I'm representing District 10, so I'm hearing perspectives from other people in Denver. But your question of do I think this makes sense? I think it does. Do I think that it will help move the needle? I think it will. I like that these are benefits that come as part of a conversation as opposed to you just get it. So, entitlements, right? That's, we've had people in Golden Triangle entitled to build quite a bit of density. And so I like that what we're doing is we're incentivizing the values that we care about here in the city of Denver. I think, Councilor Torres, I want to make sure that we're not exacerbating gentrification, but I see other values that we care about in Denver. Our sustainability goals, as we have more density, then we'll have a more sustainable city. It will also be better for mass transit if we have density. It'll be also sustainable, and if we can share lawns or have no lawn at all, like my building doesn't have an open space in front of it at all. So I think on behalf of the people of District 10, I think this makes a whole lot of sense. But again, I'm one perspective, and I feel comfortable representing the people I represent by saying I'm ready for this to go forward, and would vote in favor of it later this year. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Dr. Romero Campbell, followed by Councilman Torres.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you again for the presentation and for coming out to one of the community open houses that I had. You guys talked to a lot of residents and had to do a lot of, explaining and overview and so forth. And I know that there's a number of people who took the survey. I think for me, the challenge that I still have is it still feels like a one-size-fits-all. And so I think about a suburban context and what that means for Southeast Denver, which is the majority of what my district is. And we only have a few blocks that have an alley. We only have a few blocks with straight streets. And if I look at the slide 8, and if the math is mathing on this one, you stop at 4 units up to 5,500 square feet. And so that would be a smaller lot in Southeast Denver. So are we talking, when I see this, I'm like, so 8 units on a lot in a cul-de-sac? Or what does that look like in a suburban context? I think that this still, and I love the representing, the district that you're representing, but also I just still struggle to see how this makes a lot of sense in a suburban context.
That's a question. Is there somewhere we could get to that you would feel is appropriate for a suburban district? Or suburban context, excuse me.
I mean, I'm more than willing to have the conversation. I just feel like the conversation thus far, and I keep asking, is what does this look like? What does the modeling look like when you're in a cul-de-sac? What does this look like when we don't have alleys? When, you have a larger house, and then where do you put the other units in the back? And we've talked about setbacks, and there was a lot of work that happened around ADUs and the setbacks, and I know that was a huge compromise that was put forward, and that's what allowed, I think, people in Southeast Denver to be on board with some of that. So I would be more than willing to continue the conversation, but it's hard in this particular presentation to see how this plays out in some of the streets, because I'm thinking, like, in my mind, I'm driving down the street and I'm thinking, okay, what does it look like on this lot? And some of these, it might fit on one or two, but I'm thinking, especially some of the cul-de-sacs, and with the small entry in the front, you have a larger house, there's very little room in between the houses and between property lines. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what that looks like in a suburban context.
Yeah, that's a great question and great comment too. And you're right, this presentation, is designed to go over a lot of information, everything that we've done since March. So there are things that were left out of here. We'd love to have that conversation with you, because in the same way that you talked about ADUs, those are exactly the same types of differences that will be different in what we're proposing for a suburban district and an urban district. And, so we hear the one size fits all a lot, but, everyone will have different sizes, but everyone's getting pants. We're trying to figure out we're trying to figure out what works for different places, and we would love to work with you and have that conversation to figure out where those limits need to be, and what gets you comfortable there. We'd love to find it.
Yeah, thank you.
What's the average lot size in the neighborhood you have?
It depends on which neighborhood you're in. Probably, 7, 8, 9.
Mine's about 7,500.
Yeah. 7,500?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, we've got some lots that are larger.
Like you want?
Ours is just under 10. Just under 10.
So that size chart keeps going up?
Yeah, that size chart. So I could get roughly 9 buildings on my lot. Is that that's what the math would tell me on that particular?
I think there is a point, and here, as far as the number of units, it doesn't get any larger once you get as far as the maximum floor area beyond 4 units. I think it's 4 units where we have it. So, but it does get larger for the lot size. So that starting point would be larger for, a 7,000 square foot, or for an 8,000 square foot lot, or a 10,000 square foot lot. But there is kind of an overall cap. And so what we found is that generally, once you get up to, on a lot this size, like 3 or 4 units, and maybe 5 or 6 units on a bigger lot, that they're not able to get the return on the for the sale or rental price for those lots, for what the construction cost is and the size. There's just not enough size. So that kind of is what limits things. But if that limit needs to be somewhere else or lower, then that's what we want to have a conversation with you about.
Can I carry that out? Just trying to understand this too. So when I'm looking at slide 8, is there a max unit size? I mean, there's not really when I look at the math here, but
correct.
You're saying the maximum above grade livable area, for instance, on a 7,000 square foot lot, because of setbacks, because of those restrictions, would be 5,500. And so on a larger lot, like 9,000 or 10,000 square feet, then the other things that are going to restrict how many other units you could put on there realistically would be like access requirements, and I mean, right, private access requirements. And have we studied what that looks like in the suburban context on those weird lots compared to an urban context that's got?
Yeah, great question. Yes, so there will be a limit. Just to be super clear, there will be a table like this that exists in the code that says for a lot that is between 5,000 and 7,000 square feet, 3 units, you have a maximum square footage of 5,000 square feet for that property above grade. That will change, of course, with number of units and the lot size. We have done some testing on several different configurations of suburban lots that are larger, that are kind of curved, that are on a cul-de-sac, that are on a corner. Because it's a whole new set of problems, and you really can't fit quite as many. And there are complications, especially like with sewer and water. You have a private main, and you have to have space for that, and space for drive aisles and things. So there are lots of constraining factors that kind of limit, and that's kind of why we have not yet kind of landed on this is maximum 4 units everywhere, or maximum 6, because it appears to be self-limiting at a fairly reasonable level, and kind of but we're wide open to that conversation.
Good, thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Councilwoman Torres, followed by Caitlin.
Thank you. One thing I just picking up on the last conversation, it's self-limiting. It is also like reality based in terms of how many can you afford to build, and then how do you make that money back up? So you could build 8 or 9 units on a 9 to 10,000 square foot lot, but could you even like fill them if you're developing them? And that's like the calculus that's being done, right? Which is why it often doesn't actually happen. One of the things that, can you go to slide 26? It's your map. Oh, my hair's looking terrible. Yeah, I wish I had Kashmann. Can you, in future use of this slide, because I think it's a helpful slide, is just differentiate the colors a little bit more so I could see. And what I'm understanding about the application of this is in the prior map, you only showed new code SU zoning, not Chapter 59. Would we be looking to bridge unlocking housing choices to Chapter 59?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So just so I knew that. When I look at my district, which is like middle of the west, there, just under that little gray patch, which is Sloan's Lake, like that little collection of blue is West Colfax and Villa Park. What we're seeing there in terms of some of the addition of missing middle housing is what drove a lot of the gentrifying conversation that we had, which resulted in the West Area memo. So I'm not exclusively just content with missing middle until it also is compatible with middle income. And those are not the same thing when we actually see homes built and what they're priced at. So the memo still stands. It's when you go from SU to anything more dense, it's producing. Like we've got 3 projects under construction right now that came through with housing covenants for affordability. And so when there is, I think, the will to build, there is the will to build what we ask them to, is part of what I'm seeing happen. And so I do want to support, I think, the intention of this, particularly the infill bonus, preserving the existing home fully matches what the West Area Plan envisioned around keeping things that are already affordable, that are already accessible, and giving folks another option. It's interesting in your infill bonus graphic, the primary existing home, I'm assuming this is like a 6,500, 7,000 square foot example. Existing home, 2,200 square feet. Each of those backyard cottages is 800 square feet. My primary house is 950 square feet on a 6,500 square foot lot. And it is occupying such a little part of what my land is. And so that's what I think back to a lot when I'm thinking about what could we be building and who would it be for. And it could be 1, it could be 2, but it is also that preservation. So the infill bonus is really interesting, I think, to me, to what we've built into the West Area and even the Southwest Area Plan. I am still stuck that we haven't really done any assessment of vulnerable to gentrification. If these things, if this policy passes, or even right now, what are we seeing happen right there in terms of that? Because where most of that development took place is where I would categorize West Denver's gentrification right now. It's in West Colfax and that section of Villa Park. And so I would want to see this come forward with some protection thoughts about policy, about
what's available programmatically for folks, we have to make that a parallel track. For me, there's any chance in talking to West Denver residents about what this means for them. That's something that I'm just totally invested in for the next 6 months as we think about this. We've got to have that attached, or this feels like an exacerbation exercise. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Caitlin, followed by Alisha. Kashmann, I have you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think that this has been answered now that we've had the discussion, but I just want to confirm the kind of where you're landing on a recommendation is that it would be all three of those, right? It would be kind of maximum lot size, infill bonus, and then the affordable, right? All three in tandem? Okay. And have you done any exploration of kind of one without another, or do you really kind of, in evaluating it, see them like working together and you need all three?
That's a great question. We haven't done the exploration of what they would look like separately, because what we've learned from other cities is that at least the success of the bonuses really need the limitation on size and the changes to building form in order to, first of all, happen appropriately, so they're not so much larger and they actually truly are house scale. I think that's a really important piece. But also to incentivize builders to look at these options and kind of be creative, because there's a little bit more thinking that has to happen that's beyond kind of scraping whatever's there and plopping something new down, to picking something that fits on a lot. Maybe I think that innovation will happen, and I'm really excited to see what happens. But yes, the infill bonus, for example, really is helped by the limitation on the single unit size, so that builders have additional area to play with when they have additional units, and are through that kind of incentivized to create these.
Thanks. And on the max lot sizes, I think that these numbers have kind of gone up a little bit from the first time we saw them, which I appreciate. I think that they feel a little bit more realistic to the houses that we are seeing kind of built today and what families desire. And because I think one of my worries when they were lower in number was we would almost kind of create like a commodity of bigger existing houses in Denver that would suddenly price higher because you can't build that big anymore. And so I think trying to really be thoughtful about those maximum lot sizes to match, what's a reasonable thing that a family would want. And we don't want them to not build in Denver because they want to cross a different, city boundary to get the bigger house size. So finding the right maximum lot size. I just want to echo a couple of the comments that I heard around the test fits, and I think these are really helpful, and I think like more of them would be great on all of the different models, and especially on the maximum lot sizes, how they work with the different unit counts, and because I think part of it is understanding that the building form, fingers crossed, right, doesn't look that different. And sort of the size of the building that it's taking up on the lot can feel comfortable to something going in, but I don't know that there's that comfort yet in seeing that, especially in different contexts.
I was going to say, yeah, suburban.
Yeah, suburban especially. And then to just tag on to what Councilwoman Torres was just sharing with her district, I think, if this is to proceed, I would really love to understand how we want to track and measure, outcomes from it, because I think, best of intentions sometimes, but I think seeing, are we getting the results? What are people choosing, and understanding how that might be monitored. And then the last one is just on the expected outcomes slide. Maybe I'll just read the root policy research report, but I was just really curious on the kind of, especially the the annual maximum number was a lot. It was a high number, I thought, and just understanding how we reached that as kind of what we could see annually.
Yeah, it's in the really short version and probably slightly inaccurate version is they looked at like ideal market conditions in the best case scenario for a neighborhood and kind of said, okay, what if that happens everywhere? Mm-hmm. And that was that situation, which is would be difficult to get to that point, but we're really booming. That's what we might see. But most likely we'll see something in the middle, which is. We have, hundreds of thousands or I think around 200,000 single unit homes in Denver. So relative to that, it's and spread out across the city. Those initial homes that were removed are it's not a big number, not going to make a huge impact on housing supply, but provides options for people to, buy something or get into a neighborhood and be part of the community. So, check out the report. It's super interesting.
And then just one last, just thank you for sharing on slide 21 the key strategy results and kind of the information from the community. I mean, I think it just goes to show that this conversation needs to continue with the broader Denver community. I mean, this is really mixed, right? I don't know that I see.
I've never seen it all.
And I just think we have to acknowledge that if this is something to proceed, I think that there's a lot of education and discussion to happen in the broader Denver community to kind of bring it forward. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Who do I have up next? I have Alisha, followed by Julie, followed by Mary, followed by Rachel, followed by Councilmember Watson, followed by Kashmann, then me. Okay. So I have to keep track. I got it. Just wanted to know.
I wanted to reiterate a point that Councilwoman Torres said about kind of having the policy follow this. So, Councilman Hinds made the comment that, you're okay with, getting rid of single-family zoning like Minneapolis, but some of the key differences in Minneapolis is that they have an anti-displacement fund. They have reduced property tax rate in exchange for deed restrictions up to 10 years. They have very robust tenant protections, inclusionary zoning for larger projects, which I think in Denver we also have the EHA. Free and low-cost energy assessments and cost sharing for solar efficiency upgrades. Those are pretty significant incentives for developers to implement this, right? And so these are some of the guardrails that are there, and I think it's really, the cost slides that we have on here don't necessarily account, I think, for the permitting time. Maybe it does.
They should. They do.
And of a realistic project schedule.
I think it's on there. It's on the most recent advisory committee slide has a better breakdown of all of the factors.
Just because I know that's a big cost, but also just all the impact fees, right? So almost every single jurisdiction, Minneapolis, Seattle, Austin, Portland, they all waive impact fees. And so they're a little bit more friendly to the homeowner who wants to develop. I feel like what we have right now is very friendly to affordable housing developers only. They have the capital and the way in which to do deed restriction to fit in their capital stack nicely. So I think that the way it's written is going to benefit maybe 5 developers in Denver. And even though I know we're in a housing crisis and every single unit matters, and I think this is a step in the right direction, I'm concerned about the impact versus intent. And the fact is most of our city is built by market rate developers. I think that when we talk about equity, they also have to be part of that conversation, which I think we're trying to get there with some of the deed restriction pieces. But then also in the slides in planning or in the steering committee also showed like a mention of subsidy to make these deals pencilable. And there still wasn't clear guidance on who's providing that subsidy. Is that coming from the city and the city afford that? For the nonprofit developers, they'll have subsidies through their capital stack, through LIHTC or other tax exemptions from the federal government they'll be able to get and trade for private equity. And so those are things that aren't totally fleshed out, and so I'm concerned about having a blanket kind of zoning change without those guardrails, or it disproportionately benefiting a few for maybe like, less than 80 less than 80 units citywide, and maybe that's okay. And then the last thing I want to point out to you that was pointed out in the steering committee was that so HUD sets those rates for affordability, but it represents a third of that household's income that can go to housing. So the price that we see that's a third of, so when you think about overall what they're making, right? It's not a good reflection necessarily of, back to, I think someone mentioned that about what they can actually afford. And so I think that 70% AMI numbers should be scrutinized a little harder and see if we can't do deeper affordability on that. Again, we want people to be able to qualify for them. So I think having a wider range makes sense. That's more deeply affordable. Thanks.
Can I respond to some of that? Is that okay? So yeah, great points. And as you mentioned, you said some of this during our meeting. Yeah, you're exactly right that especially the affordable housing bonus is steered or directed towards particularly affordable housing developers. Should be clear that that subsidy needed was that kind of gap in that capital stack that you identified, and was just clearly to show that it's not likely to be taken up by market rate developers. And as we talked about during the advisory committee meeting, this is a good way to think about this as almost like a pilot, right? There are very few developers, builders, who can make this kind of full redevelopment of a property happen for this missing middle housing type, because they have the resources to do so and the additional funding and all of those resources in place. And so that's going to, even though it only is going to be a few houses, each year potentially, it's a good pilot, and it's working in the right direction. You're exactly right. We need to identify some of those other incentives, and we hope to do that during this period of the project right now, which we're in, which is kind of this refinement of these strategies now that we've kind of have this really good framework. The market rate developers are really, we're pointing them towards building the infill development rather than McMansion, rather than the really large scrape and rebuilding, in order to create more costs, lower cost units on properties while still adding value and still adding something that works for them. But that's the direction that that the market rate is for now. So great points. I think you've identified a lot of things that we're going to be looking at, and we'll talk with the advisory committee about these things over the next month, and we're looking forward to that. But thanks for your comment. Just wanted to kind of add some more of that context about kind of our intent is that we are going to have low uptake on that. The affordability bonus and market rate developers are mostly going to be looking at the infill. So.
Thank you. Great points. Next up, we have Julie, followed by Mary.
Taking a different spin from a landscape architect perspective, so bear with me. I just wondered, when you did your calculations on the square footages on the lots, did you take into consideration additional open space requirements beyond setbacks? I'm looking at envisioning, when I saw those sketches, the now impervious versus pervious calculations are completely skewed. And I'm wondering what kinds of mediation we might be able to also incorporate in this requirement.
Yeah, great question. So we are taking the urban house and suburban house form and reducing from there. Those forms have maximum building coverages that are staying in place. So what's currently protected for open space beyond setbacks and things is going to be kind of what it is today for a single unit house. Additionally, we'll be really looking at another project that's moving forward through our department is the Denver Resilient Landscapes Project, to take up the mantle on some of those impervious impervious land questions and kind of whatever recommendations come out of that to, or whatever changes would affect house scale buildings and in house scale neighborhoods will apply to anything that we're proposed here. So looking forward to rolling that in as well. So, but yeah, great questions.
Anything else? Looks like we have Mary, followed by Rachel.
Thank you. I'm so excited for this. I am primarily and like most emphatically excited about the possibility of this as a wealth building strategy. So I'm ready for the day when we flip our affordable housing approach on its head, and instead of creating opportunities for people who can't afford market rate housing, we create opportunities for them to have other means of getting money in their pocket and living the life that they want. I also really like opportunities to decommodify housing. So the idea of requiring preservation of the existing unit, I think, is an interesting way to do that, and the affordability requirements an interesting way to do that. I do have a little bit of concern, having been somebody who lived in rent control housing in a different city, is the incentive to preserve substandard housing and to keep things that aren't necessarily meeting our habitability standards. And so I'm just curious if there's a timeline of saying, we have to, in order to use this, preserve the existing home for 5 years, 10 years. But I don't think it should be a 30-year requirement. And so just really thinking about that and not encouraging people to keep units that aren't good for people to live in. I'm also very excited to see how this interacts with the housing needs assessment as well, and looking at the revised goals from HOST, including how we can help homeowners be part of the housing solutions in our city and benefit from creating more housing. So kind of right along with what you were saying, Alisha. Right now, our current one-year production goals for new income-restricted units through HOST is 575 units. So looking at what could be created through this program could really help us set our targets far more in line with what our needs are, as opposed to just kind of nibbling around the edges the way we've been doing for the last several years. Going back to the wealth building strategy piece, though, and this kind of, I feel like, gets to what you were saying, Councilwoman Torres. I'm working a lot in the community around the Burnham Yards development right now. I would love to see the legacy homeowners there have the opportunity to add units that they could short-term rent and benefit from all the income that's coming there. And at the same time, I think, if we're thinking about how this interfaces with existing short-term rentals, that's also an incentive for people to come in, even more of an incentive for people to come in and lowball those homeowners so they have an opportunity to add units that they can short-term rent and benefit economically for that. So, it's kind of back to that issue that we always face when we deal with land use regulations of we want neutral tools that are equitable, and those two pieces just don't work together really well. So, thinking about how we're linking those policies, I think there's a lot of sensitivity that we need to have around that to not limit the upside for community members that have, not had those opportunities historically, without giving away the store to private equity and investors that might be coming in looking for a quick turn. Just a couple of other questions that I had, and I apologize if these were covered in previous meetings. I'm just going to run down them and respond to what you want, and I can reach out about the rest. I'm curious about how the square footage needs to be allocated across the different units, if it needs to be equal, or if I could have a 200 square foot unit and then a really nice big house. I'm also very interested in the AMI levels, specifically on the rental side for the income restricted unit. And I'm struggling with what the right answer is here. I know in our West Denver Renaissance Collaborative ADU program, the AMIs were set at 80%. So this feels low to me to look at a 70% AMI threshold. And I like the idea of having as much opportunity to house people as possible without that upper limit. At the same time, looking at vacancy rates around the city, I am concerned about requiring people to go through compliance for living in an income-restricted unit at higher AMIs when there are other rental opportunities that they wouldn't have to do that. So that just feels like a really hard question for me of what the right AMI is on the rental side. I'm also curious how mixed tenures factor in. We have an emerging co-op housing community in the city, and so looking at what they might be able to do on a property, also the land trust model. And then the last one, I promise, is how looking at that 9 units, kind of as our threshold before we get into the EHA. How does this impact the fee in lieu that they're currently paying? And does that go away if whether they're having a affordable unit, if they're taking the option to preserve the existing unit and adding units, do they still have to pay that linkage fee? So just some of the real in the weeds stuff that we like to nerd out on.
Yeah, this is great. And you're right on time for these are the questions that we're diving into right now. So I don't think I have a question for an answer for any one of those questions, to be honest. These are all things that we have on the list of questions we need to address. So
I look forward to
more clarification I could offer on short-term rentals.
Yeah.
So the city's licensing system for short-term rentals does require owner occupancy. So an accessory dwelling unit that's on the same zone lot and is an accessory to a primary house can be rented out as a short-term rental if the owner lives in the primary house. In a scenario like this, if somebody builds a new unit in the back of their property and sells it, they would have to actually live in it to be able to rent it out as a short-term rental. So there would be some licensing limitations to renting out a separate primary dwelling unit as a short-term rental.
How are we going to maintain the distinction between an ADU and separate dwelling units?
Yeah, I think that it would sort of depend on how the project went through the permitting process in the first place. And I think that's something we definitely we'll work on clarifying.
Okay.
These would be different from an accessory dwelling unit, which can be used as long as the owner lives on site as a short-term rental. It gets a little bit more complicated when we're talking about separate primary dwelling units that could be sold to different owners.
Okay. Just create an LLC though, a corporation that owns one. That's how it would be done.
Has there been, have you examined the ADU building form versus the building forms we're talking about for additional units? And they're not the same, I'm assuming? You could be
they will be pretty similar. We're going to bring in all the work that we did for ADUs and so the ADUs have the size limitation on them and things like that, but as far as the slightly taller height in the rear 35 and some step back changes and things like that from that came out of that ADUs in Denver project, we're going to wrap that into what we're looking at with building forms because they're a little bit more permissive and a little bit more realistic for an actual building in the back. So, but yeah, the kind of initial designation of building form and things like that might be more complicated, and I think that's a question still that we need to kind of nail down the details on. Because yeah, these are the tricky questions. These are the good ones.
Devils in the details. All right, next up we have Rachel, followed by Councilmember Watson. Then I'll get in, then I'll go back to you.
Okay. So starting off, your question to us was, if this was brought forward today, would we support it? And if not, what would we need to see to support it? I think there's a lot, and there's been really, really insightful questions today, but if this were brought forward today, I would be supporting it. I think there will be a lot that we learn in implementation and things that arise that, despite the really brilliant people around this table and within CPD, there will be something and a lot of some things where we say, well, didn't think about that. We need to amend this ordinance. And so I appreciate all of the work that's been done so far. A couple of thoughts and questions I had. I know like there's this tension and even in the survey responses between protecting existing neighborhood context sort of versus like even allowing the opportunity of home ownership for the kids growing up in this city. And when I look at a lot of the neighborhoods, a number of neighborhoods in Denver, even the still attainable neighborhoods, the kids who grew up in that neighborhood are not they do not have a chance to buy a home in that neighborhood. And I think this is a really interesting opportunity to give a lot of particularly young people the opportunity to purchase in the neighborhood they grew up in. Also for older people to downsize and also stay in the community that they grew up in. And so that is, I think, a really great opportunity for our city. As many others have mentioned, this is one tool. I also, I don't think that we should expect this one tool to solve all the problems. I think it needs to be followed up with other tools that both help decrease the opportunity for gentrification of these neighborhoods and also create financing that is accessible to people other than private equity. One thing that I mentioned in one of our previous conversations that I didn't really see today, but I think it potentially from a messaging standpoint and particularly with some of the more suburban contexts and on these renderings I think might be helpful is additional context on the building form. So right now in most of Councilwoman Romero Campbell's district and most of Councilman Kashmann's district, even if you were to want to preserve the existing building, build no new structure on your property, but convert your 1,200 square foot basement or 900 square foot basement into a unit for your recent college grad or your mother-in-law, you can't do that. And that feels to me like if we're talking about where can we get to a place where every neighborhood in Denver is giving something, if I'm somebody that lives in Romero Campbell's district, I feel a lot more comfortable with some of that in instances, and that I think can be done through building form than the idea of like, oh, maybe there's going to be 7 new units next door to me. One question I had is around the affordability bonus. And I know there's these two conversations that are happening simultaneously. One is around this and one is around sort of how are we thinking through incentivizing affordable housing generally. And my understanding is one of the takeaways from that conversation is that EHA hasn't really delivered, like this idea of density bonuses has not really delivered the units that we thought it would, particularly from market rate developments, to Alicia's point. And so my question there is like, if that formula is not working, why are we doing it here also without some sort of connected subsidy? Like if we're seeing that market rate developers are not going to do this because it doesn't pencil, which is sort of the takeaway that's happening with the EHA conversation. I think those two conversations should sync up, because if it's not working over there, my guess is it probably also isn't going to work to deliver the units we want to see here.
Yeah, I can answer that.
Sorry, can I just say how many? So
Sure.
Chris Gleisner came to planning board and he said EHA delivered 33 deed restricted units out of 23,000 permit.
Just a failure.
Which is really shocking.
Shocking.
Is it the interest rate or is it EHA, or is it a combination of multiple factors?
That's a great question, but
just extended the time for people who got in under the line before EHA went into effect.
I'm going to phone a friend.
But yeah.
Real quick.
Hey folks, my name is John Colorile. I work with the Department of Housing Stability. I'm going to try to answer all of this in like a general way, but I think we would probably take issue with the or I don't know if we would agree with the statement that EHA is not delivering. I think we would agree with the statement that EHA is not delivered yet, but a large part of that was the grace period issue, and that we saw some like 6-fold increase in permits right before the grace period. A lot of those projects have been working their way through the system. And for between the years of 2022 to 2024, I think we signed something like 12, and I'm trying to pull these from the top of my head, but I think we signed something like 12 EHA agreements that have now resulted in 33 units. They were smaller scale projects that didn't get in before the grace period. But in 2025, we signed somewhere around 30 of those agreements. And those are going to result in several hundred EHA units. And they just haven't come online yet because of the timeline between getting your SDP approved, getting through the construction process, yada, yada, yada. So it has a lot more to do with just market rate development really spiking in mid-2022, then going away for 2.5 years. And now that it's increasing again, we're seeing it produce at the levels that we expected, which is the numbers that Mary quoted, which was about 450 to 500 units a year is what we expect from EHA at this point.
Are not including light tech units?
That is not including light tech units.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Anything else?
So and then from our perspective, right, so this just acts totally differently, right? Since it's not inclusionary zoning policy, right, it's a bonus on top. And you can almost kind of think about it as, you know, the on the far end, and what we see many other cities doing, probably the majority of other cities who are implementing missing middle housing project or policy of some type, they will just allow those additional units without the requirements for affordable units or without the requirements that you preserve the house. Our strategy is slightly more incremental, and part of the reason is that we're treating in a way this affordability strategy like a pilot. You know, those mission-driven nonprofit developers who are going to be developing in that space are few and far between. There's only a handful of them, but they are those are the developers that you want to see doing a pilot project in your neighborhood, right? They have the outcome of the community in mind, and kind of think about it like that's kind of why we're okay with the lower outcome there. It's a pilot project. It'll work. It's income restricted. It really helps provide for this need. Market rate developers have this other option available through that, you know, the retention bonus. And you know, as combined, they're able to add these housing types that we really need. You know, starter homes in Denver. Please. Okay, I'm done. Thank you for cutting me off.
We can go EHA all day, every day, but we're not going to go there right now because we're talking about unlocking housing choices, and that's my job. Councilmember Watson.
Thanks so much, and I appreciate the context and the discussion around this, the continuous discussion around this, and I appreciate the thoughts, Rachel, that you brought forward. You and I were at an event at a house in Whittier. We have very small lots, practically the entire neighborhood. It's small lots. If you were going to do an ADU before we passed a citywide ADUs, you mostly would have to do like a variance to fit in the back. We were in a person's home. We had an event that has a double lot, but they're not able to build a second home on that lot because it's still too small. So we'd have to go through a whole other process. I think in neighborhoods like Whittier, like Cole, a little bit of Skyland, this makes complete sense for ensuring that you preserve that primary home and you provide the opportunity for folks to stay in place. I think it's for these very quirky-sized neighborhoods, and I was even shocked as I began discussing this with folks, even before we named it this. We call it missing middle housing. We're calling it in Park Hill. Many of the discussions I had with neighbors and their front porches, they have much larger lots than the rest of District 9. But a lot of the elders whose kids graduated, went to East, went to CU, went to wherever the heck they went, and they came back, they can't afford to live in Park Hill. The kids can't go to the schools that they went to. And so these families aren't looking for scraping, and the elders are looking for, can I have something on the lot where my children can live with me, or I can live in a smaller place and they take over the larger home. So I see this as an option. So to answer your first question, the answer is yes. If this was to come before us, I would be supportive of it, because I see it as one tool in the toolbox. There's plenty of stuff that still needs to be fixed with this, ensuring for displacement, ensuring that we are looking at what the affordability, what the AMI levels are. All of that is necessary, but this is a tool, and the same dialogue we had on ADU citywide with parts of my neighborhood that were concerned with it. We pulled the data of how many ADUs have been built in the communities, and some folks were, frantic about, you're going to have an ADU right next to my house, and it hasn't happened, and it is providing the opportunity. It's not mandating the ADUs on every street. And it's not mandating that you do these types of unlocking housing choices on each street. But I know the neighbors, especially in D9, that want to stay in District 9, don't want to move out east or move up north. They want to stay in Denver. I think folks are going to, folks who can, whether it's 10, 15, or whatever, they're going to look at this. So I'm looking forward to digging deeper, but I think we've been having this really thoughtful dialogue for a while. There's a lot of stuff to be fixed. I am more than ready for us to start moving this forward and seeing what we can do with this as one of the additional tools within our toolkit. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Deirdre?
Thank you. Thanks to everyone with their comments. And I think to Rachel's point in the ask of would we support this today, I absolutely think that this is headed in the right direction, and I think I would. I also believe that there will be calibration, and we have to ensure that whatever's built into an ordinance to support this in the future has some easy ways for us to go and make some corrections without a 2-year process to make the correction, depending on the severity of it, So we have to just think about the implementation scheme. I kind of start nerding out on logistics when it comes to actually adding units. And I'm wondering, and I'm assuming the root policy study maybe did this, but did we look at the specific cost to a single renovation of a single family unit or addition of an ADU, the infrastructure cost for that homeowner who is told, you need to upgrade your sewer line, you need to make this other new connection, you need to rebuild the clay pipe in front of your house because the city hasn't done it. Have we looked at those particular costs and built those into the cost of what development would be if we were to add 1 or 2 units to a single family home? And then part 2, have we looked at the city's overall infrastructure capital improvement budget and how much of that budget may in the future be dedicated or need to be dedicated to supporting comprehensive upgrades of infrastructure so that homeowners can take part in a program like this and make it more sustainable? I just see the line of homeowners saying, oh, this looks like a really cool program, and then they start leaving the line when they find out that it's going to be extremely costly just to add 1 or 2 units in the back because of a clay pipe.
Yeah, great question. I'll answer super quick. So our assumptions in the feasibility testing that we did were on a property that has fairly simple circumstances and wouldn't need to replace anything for the existing house, but it does include the cost of putting a new line and new tap fees and things like that. So there are likely scenarios that would encounter some additional costs. As far as the overall capacity goes, that is not an area where any of the infrastructure entities are concerned with overall capacity. Things are typically overbuilt, and in a lot of cases, the use isn't what it historically was, since not as many people are living in houses like they used to in a lot of our urban neighborhoods. So electricity is typically the one that's strained. Water and sewer often have more capacity, but it is definitely a case-by-case basis. We were talking to one of our committee members who was looking at building an ADU, and they said, if this block is a little bit more than half the capacity, so there will come a point, if there's really good uptake on certain places that a whole line will need to be replaced. So there are going to be those situations, but
right. Yeah. Okay, well, great, thank you.
Thank you. So to answer the question, my neighborhood is mixed. And I think if you look at the slide that has, I think it's one of the last slides there, you can see Northwest Denver has taken a predominantly big chunk of the missing middle. It's my whole entire council district. That has, yeah, that slide, that's all my council district up until West Colfax, and part of my council district before 2 years ago was West Colfax. So if you all want to see how it works, go to Tennyson. If you all want to see how it works, go to Jefferson Park. And I will say that there are big proponents of this in Northwest Denver who want to see this happen. And there's people who have lived through all of that and are adamant about not having this move forward because of the rapid change. And if you look at that slide, it's a lot around Tennyson, where we went and we took down single unit zoning and put in TU zoning and put in along Tennyson and upzoned all Tennyson, and down in Lower Highland where you had attainable housing, you had small houses, you really did, and they got wiped out, and five-story apartment buildings went in. Whole blocks, 2 blocks, 3 blocks. And even in Lower Sunnyside, you'll see where there was attainable housing right next to industrial, right? It was this really weird area. And then it got upzoned, and now it is apartment buildings. And so I would say Northwest Denver has been the poster child for unlocking housing choices. And I feel like that's why I spent from 2019 up until like 2 years ago, I think, no, up until like last year, I've been doing overlays because of the cause of unlocking housing choices, because of the missing middle. If you look, it didn't work. We were getting McMansions in Sunnyside, and so we actually came up with this idea of having a smaller floor, smaller square footage. That happened from Northwest Denver, having porches came out of the Highland overlay. I mean, I can name the overlays I've done. I won't go into them because Council President Torres had to live my extravaganza, my overlay extravaganzas. But I think I've done 7 in Northwest Denver because of all of this and trying to figure out how to combat, like how to meet this missing middle and understand. My family, my 24-year-old moved out to Arapahoe Road and I-25 because she can't live in Denver. And my niece, who we're having raised, she moved into her bedroom, and my son still lives with us. So we still have a house of 4. And my house is 920 square feet. And it's really quaint. But the hard part about what these show is you're saying that has easy infrastructure. I have a 1943 home that has 4 beautiful trees on it, 1 in the rear setback, 1 in the 2 in the side setback, and 2 in the front. So how am I supposed to even build this around any of those trees? Because the forester probably would not let me cut down those trees. They're going to have problems with me cutting down healthy trees. And then I don't have an alley in the back. And so I would have to figure out how to put that. And I have looked into an accessory dwelling unit. I really have. And I'm one of those houses that has clay pipes. And I'm like, I know that we all think that city council is a glamorous job. We have lots of access to a lot of things, but we don't get paid as much as the private sector. And so I've really been at the city for 14 years, and I've not been able to update all of the infrastructure on my house right now like I wish I could have. Instead, I've really been working for the residents of Denver. And so we have this schism in Northwest Denver where if you go, I'm sure you met people who were all adamant about unlocking housing choices, and you met people in my neighborhood who were like, absolutely not. They had lived through the whole entire redevelopment of Tennyson, of Lower Highland, and of Jefferson Park, where Jefferson Park, I know I'm a broken record, it was really one of my most diverse neighborhoods. And now I can't get anyone to live there. All the slot homes are rentals. They're all rentals. They were all really built really shoddy, and nobody wants to live there. And my schools are closing because I don't have people who want to move into those slot home form because it doesn't compatible with having kids. And then my 83-year-old mom doesn't want to live in there. I don't want to live in there. I have a bad knee. I'm like, I don't want to live on 3 stories and going up and down. So the form really, really matters in this conversation. And to Councilwoman Torres' point, when she and I were working on the West Area Plan, I'll never forget, she and I sat down and we were like, are we doing harm to our neighborhood? Are we actually setting our neighborhood up to have every single developer that used to be in Jefferson Park and in Sunnyside and in Berkeley go straight into Westwood and really decimate her neighborhood? And we've said yes. And we actually had to work with CPD and write a memo that says that we actually had to come up with something different for that West Area Plan because of the unintended consequences of opening up that development. So I think that this project is so important to have because I have seen my neighborhood in my lifetime, my small little 47 years of life, totally change in front of my eyes. And there's good parts of it. Amazing parts, amazing access. And there's some really, really sad parts of gentrification in my neighborhood that I've had to live through. I don't have little carnicerias in the corner anymore. I don't have every single carniceria in my neighborhood is gone. Every little grocery store, every little corner grocery store is gone. Unless you want to go to Locavore, and you want to spend
Save a Lot?
Yeah, or Save a Lot. I have Save a Lot on one hand, right? And then I have Locavore where you can buy, I think the last time I went there, I bought one bag of groceries for $175. So that was
Save a Lot. It's no longer there, yeah.
So this conversation is really important, but to Rachel's point, I would love to have my mom's house be able to turn into a place where the grandkids could live. I would love to be able to turn these other houses into, and it's really hard with infrastructure. I've looked at doing an accessory dwelling unit for my mom, who we want to age in place and knock down her garage and build a single unit accessory dwelling unit so she can move in there, and then my son or the grandkids. It's really hard to leverage that, and she ran Mercy Housing Colorado. I mean, we're not talking about somebody who her whole entire background is building affordable housing. And we can't figure it out. We can't crack it because we would take all the equity in her entire house and have to take out a mortgage to be able to get it done. So I think that I've learned a lot from all of these questions. I love getting into the nitty-gritty, and I love making sure that we have these conversations, because when I got on council, we didn't have these conversations up until 2019? Yeah. So I love that we have these conversations with Planning Board. I think we should keep them going. And I think, Caitlin, you said we need to do more outreach. I know I need to do more outreach. I think 4 people in Jefferson Park took this survey, and Chaffee Park, where it's my council district that has some of the biggest land, I think 5 people took it, which means 5 people didn't know about it, and that would where a lot of this could go. So I think all of us have homework to do, and tell 5 people when you're having a drink, just text them. That's what I do. I'm crazy. I'm like, oh, you want to know what I'm working on here? And I text them the survey, and I'm like, fill it out. Next time I see them, I'm like, hey, did you take that survey? I'm like kind of a stalker, so that we can actually get people taking this survey, because it's really this table and all of us at this table that really need to make sure that we're making sure that people in Denver know about this, because I had to live through people not knowing about it with group living, and it was a lot. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Question. Yes.